Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Development Control B Committee. Just a few things to go through before we get started onto the main agenda. So firstly, the formal legal standing of the meeting is that it's being held under the government's Local Authorities Coronavirus Flexibility of Local Authority Meetings Regulations 2020. To take account of these regulations, the Council has produced a set of virtual meeting procedure rules, which are available on the website. These rules mean that decisions made by this committee will have the same standing and validity as if they'd been made in person at City Hall. Members of the public who've submitted written public forum statements, I can confirm that your statements have been circulated to all members of the committee prior to the meeting and will be taken into account when the decisions on each application are made. Those of you who have indicated that you wish to speak will be called into the meeting at the appropriate point. Members of the public watching the video, you will see a number of different people on your screen during the course of the meeting, but please rest assured that only myself and the other councillors will be making the decision on each application. Just a reminder to members of the committee, please make sure you're muted when not speaking, mute yourself after you've spoken, and please use the raised hand facility in Zoom to indicate you'd wish to speak. We'll be voting when we come to the vote. When you're moving a motion, please make it as clear as possible what you're moving, and we'll do a roll call for voting as we've been doing in all these meetings. So that's everything that I need to go through. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we've heard apologies from Councillor Mike Davies, and Councillor Fabian Breckles will be substituting for him today.
Thank you. I saw apologies from Stephen Clark as well. Any declarations of interest? No, see shakes of heads. Okay, and the minutes of the previous meeting, does anyone have any comments on the minutes? Doesn't look like it. Okay, can I have a seconder to sign the minutes, please? Richard, thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is appeals. Over to you, Gary, to summarise.
Thank you, Chair. So just one case to bring to your attention on this occasion. That's item 10, which is on page 13 of your papers. This relates to the former police dog and horse training centre on Deanery Road. You may recall the committee considered this application, essentially relocation of the Baltic Wharf Caravan Club to this site. You considered it at your meeting on the 14th of October last year. Whilst the officer recommendation was to refuse on grounds including greenbelt, heritage and flooding, the committee resolved to grant planning permission because of the greenbelt and the flooding issues. We had to refer the application to the National Casework Unit to check whether the Secretary of State was going to call in the application for his own determination. As you can see from the fact that it's on the appeals list, it has actually been called in by the Secretary of State. The inquiry, as you can see from the papers, will commence on the 20th of July. So that's something to look out for in the quite near future. So just advising you there that your resolution was certainly noted, and obviously we will have to field expert witnesses at that inquiry to defend that intended decision. And obviously I will keep you posted as to that process and the outcome. And that's all this time around, Chair, unless members had any questions on that or any of the other items.
Thank you, Gary. I see Richard's got a question.
Item 57, 28 Dancy Mead High Ridge. Can Gary comment on the approval, or if not, could he email me with a response, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I noted that item 57, yes, I will have a look into that and report back to Councillor Eddy on that matter after the meeting.
Thank you. Any other questions on the appeals? Nope, doesn't look like it. Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to enforcements. Back to you, Gary.
Thank you, Chair. So as you can see there, 3 new notices served since the last time the committee met. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for anyone? Nope. Okay, thank you. On to the next item then, which you'll notice is a new item on the agendas. For practice notes, just a bit of background for members of the committee. It was agreed at the recent DC Leeds meeting that we would add practice notes as a standing item to the agendas of DC meetings, as a marker really to say what's going on with them, and to encourage and ensure members are reading and up to date with what practice notes have been published and what their content means in terms of making decisions at these committees. So the key ones that are noted there is the space standards practice note, which was recently published, and the climate change and sustainability note were also updated recently. So I just ask you to note those, please. Didn't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Gary.
No, thank you, Chair. You covered it better than I would.
Thank you. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is public forum. For the members of the public who are watching, the way that we do public forum at DC meetings is that we take the public forum before each application individually is considered. So we'll take the public forum for the We the Curious application now, but if you're here for the Astry Close one, then we'll take you before that that item starts. Also, just a bit of a few points really for public forum speakers. You've got a minute to speak. We do have a lot of speakers today, so I'm going to have to be strict on the timing. Please don't repeat the written statement that you've submitted. Just summarize the key points and add anything additional that you might want to say. You'll be added into the meeting, and you might note that if you're watching on the YouTube stream, there's a bit of a lag. So please turn your YouTube stream off as soon as you're added to the meeting, because we end up hearing it in the background. It disrupts the meeting. Okay, so without further ado, let's go to the first public forum speaker, which is Donna Speed. Hi there, Donna. Do you want to just test your mic's working?
Yes, here's a tester.
Hi, yeah, we can hear you fine. If you want to go ahead when you're ready then.
Great, thank you. Good evening, councillors. I'm Donna Speed, Chief Executive of the educational charity We the Curious. It's been a difficult year for We the Curious. Being closed for 13 months has resulted in significant redundancies and a loss of 3.4 million in revenue. With 250,000 additional paying visitors, ARC is an incredibly good opportunity for our recovery, safeguarding and creating new jobs. In the year before the pandemic, We the Curious welcomed 54,000 school children and 6,500 of Bristol's most marginalised residents through our doors. ARC would give us the resources to double those numbers. A huge boost to our mission in creating an inclusive culture of curiosity. And when you see the ARC video, it is difficult not to get excited. ARC would bring huge benefits to the city, and it is a perfect opportunity to get all Bristol residents engaged with science and technology. So I ask you to please approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we move to Keith Rundle.
Good evening, councillors. I'm assuming you can hear me. Yeah, I'm Keith.
Yes, go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, I'm the Operations Director at the City Centre Business Improvement District. The bid fully supports this application. Has there ever been a time when investment in the city centre is more needed? We the Curious is among a cluster of extremely important attractions which need all the support that they can get as they and other businesses commence the start on the slow road to post-COVID recovery. The spending that ARC will bring from visitors will also benefit the city centre's hospitality industry, which employs many young people who have paid a disproportionately high price economically during the lockdown. The ARC itself is a great invention which will only reinforce Bristol's reputation for being at the forefront of technological innovation and engineering excellence. I believe we should wholeheartedly welcome ARC to We the Curious and Millennium Square. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaking, we have Gary Top.
Good evening, councillors. I'm Gary Top, Executive Director at Arnold Feeney, just over the road from where the ARC is proposed to be. We strongly support the proposal for ARC. ARC would extend the long-term harbourside renewal that Arnold Feeney helped to catalyse in the 1970s. The role of culture and creativity in Bristol is central to its economic success, and a flagship innovation like ARC, in collaboration with the educational charity We the Curious, will add further to the already successful cluster of cultural institutions that already characterise the Harbourside. Millennium Square is the perfect location for ARC, which has every potential to encourage more visitors, more communities to experience the Harbourside as a place of learning, as a place of enjoyment, and a shared public space, and to build a city centre that is truly inclusive, ambitious, and welcoming to all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Stephen Bond.
Good evening, councillors. I'm a heritage advisor, including to UNESCO, government departments and local authorities. I also provide heritage training, including to Historic England. I'm advising the applicant on this scheme. Officers have recommended you refuse this application for one reason: harm to the significance of heritage assets surrounding ARC. All parties accept that less than substantial harm to the significance of some of those assets will result from ARC. But by far the greater part of the significance of each and every heritage asset, including the cathedral, will remain unaffected by ARC's presence and operation. It is very evident that ARC would deliver a range of exceptional public benefits that includes considerable heritage benefits. In my professional view, those heritage benefits have been undervalued by Historic England and officers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Karen Howe.
Good evening, councillors. I'm Karen Howe. I'm a legal director with DAC Beechcroft. As a planning solicitor, I've been instructed by the applicant to advise on the legal position should committee members overturn the officer's recommendation and decide to approve these applications. My professional advice is that given Bristol City Council officers and Historic England have assessed the harm as less than substantial, then committee members must decide in accordance with paragraph 196 of the NPPF if the public benefits outweigh the harm. If you decide that the benefits are sufficiently great to outweigh the harm, bearing in mind the more important a building's listed status is, the greater the benefits must be, then your decision will be upheld. The application cannot be referred to the Secretary of State, nor would that in itself be a reason to allow your decision to be successfully challenged through judicial review. Put bluntly, if you choose to overturn the recommendation, you may do so if you consider that the benefits outweigh the harm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. My Zoom crashed, so I've got the statement from Stephen Bond, and this one was Karen Howe, was it?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so yeah, I've got the statements in front of me. It's okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Karen. Let's move to the next speaker, which is Martin Kendall.
Good evening, councillors. I have no commercial interest in this proposal, but as a Bristol architect, I felt compelled to speak in support. Several years ago, we designed the Serpentine Castle Bridge connecting Castle Park with Finsbury's Reach, which has since won awards and is now a celebrated part of our city's fabric. Like ARC, Castle Bridge was also recommended for refusal on the grounds of harm to the surrounding heritage setting. Thankfully, committee members chose to approve it. ARC is another excellent example of how the modern and old can coexist beautifully and built on Bristol's rich history for engineering innovation. I recently heard the mayor asked about people rediscovering fun, and he rightly said that broader issues of life quality are the key. I think ARC will be the perfect embodiment of this philosophy, bringing enjoyment, knowledge and awareness together perfectly. Let's not allow our creative city to shy away from the bold and ambitious. So please say yes to ARC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next we have Alice Ellis.
Good evening, councillors. I'm Alice Ellis from ARC. We've had amazing support from your community, residents, local businesses, Destination Bristol, the cathedral. Almost everyone loves ARC. Obviously, we're dismayed our application is recommended for refusal. We think ARC would make a stunning addition to Harbourside. And of course, the benefits outweigh any harm. There would be hundreds of jobs, £13 million spent to help Bristol recover from COVID. ARC is fully solar powered, and we think its elegant design will add to, not detract from, the environment. 10% of our profits will go into free and subsidised tickets, just one of the measures we are proposing to ensure ARC is inclusive. As Councillor Stephen Pearce said, lots of people currently don't identify with the harbour at all. ARC will change that. Please support us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Councillor Mark Wright.
Thank you, Chair. In the last 4 years, we've seen a flood of very tall and bland tower blocks get recommended for approval in very sensitive historic areas, and I've opposed nearly all of them on historic heritage grounds. But they were recommended for approval on wider public benefits grounds, despite carrying harm rated by officers at less than substantial. Here we have something totally different. Here we have an elegant and delicate addition to the area that requires no demolitions, and that is a unique public attraction. It will allow people new and unprecedented views of the historic buildings all around, particularly of the cathedral. A huge public benefit. So I am baffled by the officer recommendation for refusal here. I really am. ARC will put Bristol on the map in a way that Brunel would have loved. So I'm urging you to listen to all the local organisations that back this, including the cathedral itself, and approve these plans.
Thank you. Next, we have Roger Jimson.
Hello, I represent Bristol Walking Alliance, and we're concerned that not enough consideration has been given to the potential amenity impact of the ARC on Millennium Square. The officer's report before you summarises this concern by saying the ARC's noise, dominance and movement would inhibit existing use of the pools and water features, and its mass and kinetic nature would overshadow and interrupt people's experience and enjoyment of Millennium Square. If the committee were minded to accept the application, we ask that the pollution officer's suggestion that a condition regarding noise levels in Millennium Square could be added to the decision notice. Our statement includes a suggested wording for such a condition to limit the noise. We're also concerned that the overhead movement of the ARC's 10-metre long, 18-tonne counterweight moving 4 metres above people's heads will create a distraction and therefore a hazard for the pedestrians and cyclists who have to share the space beneath the base of the ARC. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, we have David Redgwell.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, my comments really are in support very much of the ARC. I just make this point in the reality of the world. We don't live in a museum in Bristol. The docks were in fact a derelict docks 20 years ago. It's only through the work of Bristol City Council and the regeneration of the area that we now have the tourist attraction everybody now wants to protect. I'm going to remind everybody this attraction is going to bring 250,000 visitors a year. And at the moment, we're suffering one of the toughest depressions after COVID-19. There's no thought in this, apart from the employment side of the City Council, about jobs and employment for young people in the city, working class people who work in tourism, in hotels, in guest houses, in the harbour side bars, and the issues around that generate employment and tourism in the city is worth £1.4 billion of investment, and there was also 600,000 jobs involved. There was pre-COVID in tourism in the southwest and in Bristol in particular. I just make the point that the cathedral, the diocese are very happy with the proposal. We have other such developments in other cities like London. Please. Okay. And I just think this is heritage gone mad. I'm a great supporter of heritage in Bristol, been involved in it for years, but this is heritage, English heritage and Victorian society absolutely gone mad, really. And it just should go through, and we should just get on and develop Bristol for the benefit of people visiting the city. It's a great, wonderful city.
Thank you, David. Thank you. So that concludes the public forum. Let's now then move to the officer presentation, please. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Right, can everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, everyone's obviously very familiar with the site, Millennium Square. The Arc is going to be positioned here in the northeast corner. It's surrounded obviously by lots of leisure and tourist uses, and you've got various hostelries close by. Got We the Curious, the aquarium, the watershed, and then over the road, over Anchor Road to the north, you've got the cathedral, Grade 1 listed building, and you've got the Cathedral School, Grade 2 star listed building. You've got the library and the Grade 1 listed gatehouse building just here. These are the existing elevations of the GWR goods shed, the We the Curious building. And you can see there, this is the addition from 1998, which is set back significantly from the Anchor Square frontage. And this is the proposed elevations. Again, this is the south elevation looking towards Millennium Square, and this is the elevation from Anchor Square. And there's the existing elevations to the north and west. The top one shows Anchor Road elevation. And this is as proposed with the extensions. There would be the capsule with resting on the top of the roof of the We the Curious building. And here are cross sections of the Arc. And just a few facts for you. The total height is to this point, this point here would be just about 79 meters. The cabin floor would be 67 meters, say, from ground level. The base, the bottom of the base in Anchor Square would be of 3 meters in diameter, 8 square meters total in area. The capsule would take up 42 people with a pilot and co-pilot. They would be on 20-minute flights. That includes time for boarding and disembarking. It would be a smooth flight. There'd be a horizontal position at all times and with a maximum speed of 5 miles per hour. The pilot within the capsule would be the guide or the storyteller, if you like, describing the stories and history of Bristol during each flight. It would operate for a maximum of 18 hours a day. It would be in the air for 60% of that time when operational, and at the highest point for half of that time. So that's 50% of the 60%. When not in use, it would rest in a vertical position. It would not be lit other than with aircraft warning lights. And as you've heard, it would be, it's forecast it would get start with about 250,000 visitors a year, going up to possibly 330,000 visitors a year. Okay, looking at some images. These images from photographs are from the Townscape and Visual Impact Assessment, the TVIA. They've used a wide-angled lens. Now that tends to distort the picture in that you get more of the foreground showing, sort of a wider perspective, and that makes objects look further away than they actually are. So throughout this presentation, I've also interspersed it with images that have been produced by our city design group colleagues using the VU City app. And that uses a 50mm lens, which is more how you would see it through the naked eye. So this is Anchor Square as it is now and as proposed. And here we see the additions to the We the Curious building, which are thought to harm the building, the We the Curious building, which is listed Grade 2. It's Millennium Square as you know it, and that is with the Arc. And as I say, with this wide-angled lens, it does appear perhaps smaller than it would be. This is looking through from a planetarium into Anchor Square. And here's the first of the VU City images from roughly the same point. And you'll see there that some of the issues that are raised in the report, and we've heard just now from the Bristol Walking Alliance, Roger Gimson, of the aspect of this, the local impact the Arc would have with this very wide base and with the movement here of the fulcrum coming down in an arc to around here, which would be 4 meters above ground level. So this is going to change, very much change the character of the Millennium Square in this corner. And there have been comments made about the fact that this could inhibit use of the paddling pools and children and so on enjoying this area and the water features. There's also comments about that it might inhibit use of the Brunel Mile running through here, a combined pedestrian cycle track. Although our colleagues on highways don't think it is a problem, there is enough space to do that. And that's from the reverse, that's from Anchor Road looking through into Millennium Square. This is Anchor Road, before and after, before at the top and after below, obviously. And north of Anchor Road, of course, you've got the cathedral, and this is College Green, looking back south towards the site from Park Street. And this is one of the key views where there is some serious concern about the heritage impact, because you'll have the arc there, are very modern, and you can see it's quite an alien shape and structure and appearance coming behind the medieval church, the medieval cathedral, and it will intermittently come up and down here, which will really change the whole feel of the church and the ambience there. And here again, this is at the top end of College Green at Deanery Road. There you have the west end of the cathedral, the gatehouse, and you have the cathedral school here, and the arc would, as I say, would come up, rise and descend at that point. And with VU City, this is taken from a point slightly forward of that, but you've got the cathedral here, and these are the Abbey buildings with the arc going up and down behind it. Perry's Bridge. And this is from Prince Street Bridge. Oh yes, here you can just see, if you look closely, there's been some marks made here of the movement of the arc during its flight. And there again, from the same angle, is more how it would appear with the naked eye. This is Princess Wharf and the M shed, the east. And this is the centre. Now this shot is been included at a later stage following request from Historic England, who are very concerned about the dominance of the cathedral would be lost through having this moving structure, the arc, coming up and down here. And as you're probably aware, over the last few decades, all the redevelopment of the Docklands area has made great play of keeping views open of the cathedral to sort of maximise the assets that the value of the cathedral has, and to replicate historically what would have been there at one time. That's with VU City moving forward towards the front, and how it would actually appear going up and down in that position in this sort of movement. It's moving further across to the west end of the shed. And this is from the Fairbairn crane. Again, another one from the same position using VU City. Further afield now, this is from the Redcliffe back above the Arnold Feeney building, the listed building. There it is again. And Redcliffe Parade. Queen's Square, this is the south side of Queen's Square. This will be looking west towards Perry's Bridge and Anchor Square beyond. And this is one from Brandon Hill, showing St Mary Redcliffe in the distance, and obviously the arc between St Mary Redcliffe and the hill. Okay. In terms of consultation, we had 35 responses, 32 overwhelmingly in support, 32 of them were in support, with 3 against. We also had 2 comments of support from Councillor Wright. Points in support are the fact the arc would greatly support the local economy, tourism, would improve employment prospects, create new employment, support existing employment. It would improve the image of Bristol, and it would provide educational value. Objection points raised were that it would have a harmful impact on Millennium Square for the reasons mentioned earlier. It would harm the skyline of Bristol. It is a bulky extension to the Wheel of Curious building, and it would be enjoyed by a minority to the detriment of the wider public. And it's felt that the views from the arc would be available elsewhere. Turning now to the key issues, there's obviously no issue concerning the principle of this. It's a leisure tourism use, and this is exactly where we think such uses are acceptable and indeed are supported and would complement the other existing uses in that area. In terms of the design, there have been very mixed views on this. It is a quality design, it's elegant, it's innovative, it's obviously very different and unique. And it was supported by the BUDF at the pre-application stage. And there have been, but very diverse comments have been received concerning its impact on the townscape. Some have seen this as replicating, for example, the movement of masts and sails. Ones would have been there in the harbour, and others feel it's just an alien feature that shouldn't go there. So we've sort of left the design on that. We're not really concluding either way on design. What is clear to everybody, though, and all interested parties agree, is that there are harm to heritage assets. There's difference in the degree of that harm, but basically it is less than substantial harm. And in cases like this, you have to weigh up the harm against the public benefits. And just to set that out, the scale of the harm as we see it are to some grade 1 listed buildings, the cathedral in particular, the adjacent grade 2-star Abbey buildings, which is the cathedral school, the grade 2 listed We the Curious building, the grade 2 listed Leadworks and Chimney. We also feel it's harmful to the character and appearance of the City Docks conservation area in which it sits, the City and Queen Square conservation area, and at the College Green conservation area. So we need to weigh that level of harm against the public benefits, which are put forward by the applicants as being four areas of public benefit. One is the heritage benefit, which the applicants see as enabling people to go and into the Ark and obviously see the cathedral in particular from a new angle, and it would increase interest in those heritage benefits. This has been put forward also by Stephen Bond in the presentation in his heritage statement. But Historic England sort of said that very limited weight could be given to that public benefit, as they feel increased visitor numbers and the ability to view the heritage assets from a different perspective don't or do not mitigate the harm being done to those assets. In terms of the design, again, the applicants have said that there is a design benefit because it's outstanding in its nature. We, as I've just said, we do see, yes, it is innovative, bold and exciting, but its merits are mixed, and in close proximity, such as in Millennium Square, it is very large and dominant and can't really be said to fit in with the overall form and layout of its surroundings. So we don't see, for that reason, that it fits in with the definition of being outstanding set out in the NPPF. So that leaves us with the educational two further benefits the applicant put forward, which is the educational and cultural benefits and the economic benefits. Now, the educational benefits is an interesting one. This is that the pilots of the capsule would tell stories to their audience and provide narratives on history and the development of Bristol, or on their own cultural take on perhaps the history of Bristol. And it's an interesting idea. So we feel there is the potential for some educational and cultural benefit being provided from that, although we don't know quite how well that would work. And also they've stated that 10% of their profits would go towards something called a social innovation program, which would reach out to other sections of the community that wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to experience the Ark. And this, say we have 300,000 visitors a year on the Ark, that would equate to about 1%. So that would be 3,000 subsidised or free tickets for people who would be able to experience those educational and cultural benefits. Overwhelmingly, the final public benefit, the economic benefit, is one where there is a great deal of significance. It is a significant new tourist attraction. It will generate a great deal of interest. It will clearly support the curious, will increase the number of overnight stays in Bristol. It's going to help a lot of existing hostelry and tourist-related businesses. There will be jobs created, jobs supported. There have been lots of figures bandied about what this all could mean. And yes, there are clear benefits in that respect. So yes, I can see why there have been quite a few comments about why on earth are we standing in the way of this, why are we recommending refusal when it has those clear benefits, certainly in terms of the economic side. Well, the NPPF is very clear on this point. It says that great weight has to be given to an asset's conservation, and the more important the asset, the greater the weight to be given. And we're talking here about a Grade 1 listed building, the cathedral. Grade 1 listed buildings constitute 2% of all listed buildings. That's a tiny number of listed buildings. It's up there with Salisbury Cathedral, Wells Cathedral, Lincoln Cathedral, and so on. And it's felt not just that, but it's going to harm the setting of Grade 2 star listed buildings alongside it, the Abbey buildings, that is, the Cathedral School. It's going to harm Grade 2 buildings, really curious, the Legworks, and others such as the Memorial Building, the Wills Memorial Building, top of Park Street, as well as the character and appearance of 3 conservation areas, those being College Green, City and Queen Square, and the City Docks conservation area. And we feel, taken together, that's a lot of harm, it's permanent adverse impact, and it's really of such a scale that we feel that is not outweighed by the public benefits. And for that reason, it's been put forward for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Can we go to questions then now? Fabian, then Richard, please.
Thank you, Chair. When Millennium Square was being put in, what weight, how much consideration was given to harm to listed buildings then? Because you think you've got this huge mirrored planetarium, you've got very modern water features, you've got a whole row of very modern sort of vents that are floodlit at night. You've got the building that's now the aquarium with its huge canopied, huge sort of tented roof. What is now We the Curious has one side that is completely glass facing Anchor Road. Plus it's already had a new set of suite of buildings, suite of rooms put on the roof, while the City Hall was being refurbished. I remember meeting in there. So, Millennium Square is already a massive mix of old, very old and very new. You think about the sort of the side of the square that's the hotels and the and bars and everything else. So what heritage weight was given then when those developments were allowed and went ahead compared to this?
Yeah, you're touching on a lot there, and there's an awful lot to research into that to really give you a detailed answer to that question. What I can mention is that on the We the Curious building, there were awards given for the design of the roof extension, which I showed in the first few slides, because that was done along with the conversion of the building itself very sensitively to retain the architectural and historic interest of that building as a listed historic building, the Really Curious building. And certainly on the Anchor Square frontage, the extension was set well back. So actually in Anchor Square now, you can barely see the second story extension. The issues of the planetarium and the related new developments to the west, I can't really comment on that. I don't know what was said at the time and what comments were made, but clearly, yes, there has been quite a lot of change to the context of the setting of Really Curious of the GWR Goodshed building as it would have been when operational.
Thank you. Richard, next, please.
I've got 2 questions, Chairman. Firstly, Paul, I'm confused. For over 2 months, officers have been telling us that an ugly, unattractive university library would have 0 impact on neighbouring heritage assets. Now you're telling us we should turn down this more slimline, quite attractive observation cabin for the same reason. why this walked assessment of the impact on heritage assets?
I think there's 2 points to raise there. I just firstly correct you, Councillor, because we didn't say that the University Library building would not have an impact. We said that it would have an impact, but we said that the public benefits would outweigh that impact. As far as the weight of the assets is concerned, on the second one, on the second point in your question, that the heritage assets in this case are much, much stronger than in the case, are much greater than in the case of the University Library. In the case of the University Library, you had a grade 2 listed building, which was the school, the Bristol Grammar School. And there was the tower of the school in particular, which you wouldn't see in such close proximity with views of the library. Looking at the frontage of that library would be off to the left and behind. Whereas with this one, you've got a grade 1 listed cathedral, and you would see it, the arc coming up behind it as you look at it from Park Street. And you'd also see the arc very, very clearly to the front of it as you looked at it from the Prince's Wharf. And it would be a very dominant vertical feature, and its movement would be eye-catching and which would draw attention away from the cathedral itself and the other listed buildings behind it, being the Wills Memorial Building and further up Park Street. So we feel the impact on heritage assets there is much greater, and you're also dealing with impact to greater assets, much more important heritage assets.
Secondly, if members would be minded to approve this after debate, my understanding is conditions have been agreed between the officers and the applicant. Can you confirm that, please?
Sorry, I missed that, Councillor.
My understanding is conditions have been agreed if this was approved between officers and the applicant.
I've received some draft conditions from the applicant who's asked me to have a look at that. So we haven't actually agreed any conditions. And that would be something that we just have to leave and see what the outcome was on this application following.
My understanding is those being shared with Dawn Bodhill and Eagle, and the only issue she raised was actually the educational commitment to the 10% profits, and the applicant is happy to agree to the amended condition.
My question to Dawn in our legal team was whether this should be done through, this is the social innovation programme, whether this should best be done through a unilateral undertaking or through a planning condition. And she agreed that it could actually be done through a planning condition.
Fine.
Can I just bring Gary in on this, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think as is the case, if a committee is minded to grant approval in these circumstances, if that was to happen, then you would delegate authority to officers to agree conditions. I'm sure there are conditions that can be worked up, as you've indicated. That's at a relatively advanced stage, but obviously that process would have to be finalised to ensure that that we're covering the development correctly and sort of helping the applicants deliver to their commitments. There would also need to be a Section 106 agreement alongside it, and I think certainly with regards to I think it's traffic regulation order or transport contributions. It's something we would, armed with a different resolution from the committee to the recommendation. If that was the case, that would be something that we would then progress discussions with the applicants about.
Thank you, Gary. So I've got Fee next, then Ollie, then Sultan.
Hi there. I've got a couple of questions and a clarification. Sorry, my table moved. Somebody referred to the paddling pools in the Millennium Square. They're not actually paddling pools, are they? Because from memory, they've got big signs all over them saying, "Do not paddle here." Although we all do. Anyway, the figures that you gave us around there being around 3,000 potential free or subsidised visitors per year based on 1% of the profit, I think it was. I mean, it's slightly finger in the air, isn't it? But how firm are those figures, do you think, Paul? Because clearly nobody really knows. I mean, there's sort of guesses, aren't there? But nobody is completely certain how many people this is going to attract. You can make a sort of rough ballpark guess. But on a scale of 1 to 10, how firm do you reckon that figure of 3,000 is? Finger in the air. And I have another question as well about the heritage issue, which touches on what Richard was saying. But I think we established in that previous application around the university library that the harm to heritage is pretty subjective, isn't it? I mean, there's no hard and fast rule or matrix saying this scores 4.3, therefore we do this. There is a high degree of subjectivity to it all, is there not? So 2 questions. One around the subsidised places, how firm is it? And 2, just checking on the kind of level of subjectivity around harm to heritage. Thank you.
Yes, on the first point, we don't know quite how inclusive the ARC would be if you are minded to approve. 10% of profits would go into this social inclusion programme, but how effective that would be in reaching those sections of the community which are difficult to reach is just not clear. And the applicant has put that forward, an idea that if that works well, if that 10% is used effectively, then that may well translate into around 3,000 tickets for people to use. So we don't know, you're right on that point. Secondly, yes, it's very difficult. There are no hard and fast rules about heritage issues, and I can really only repeat the messages I made earlier on to Richard Eddy, that you know, we're dealing here with much higher graded historic heritage assets, and we have to give them very great weight in looking at the harm to them, and it's very difficult to balance out public benefits against that harm. I don't really know what else I can really say on that. It is a very tricky one.
So I just wanted to confirm the sort of the level of discretion and subjectivity around the whole issue. That was all. But that's, sorry, I'll shut up now.
Chair, could I add to that really? Because I mean, Councillor Hans is right. Is that there is certainly a degree of subjectivity to this assessment. It's harm weighed against public benefits, and obviously individual members of the committee will have their own view on the scale of those public benefits, and also will have a view on the scale of the harm to be assessed. I guess what we would guide you is that you shouldn't really make any statements in terms of that the harm, for example, with the library proposals, is the same or less than this one, because I think, as Paul has set out, because of the nature of the heritage assets involved, including grade 1 and grade 2 star buildings, I think it's safer territory to, I think, acknowledge that yes, the harm is greater than in that case, but it is open to you as individual committee members to attach whatever weight you feel is reasonable and correct in terms of public benefit. So that'd be the only kind of guide I would give you, really. It's not completely subjective, but there is a degree of subjectivity to it within that kind of guidance.
Thank you, Gary. Ollie, next, please.
Thank you, Chair. So my question is about, because it's difficult to predict really for sure, especially with all the COVID stuff that's going on, exactly what sorts of tourist numbers we're likely to have over the next couple of years. But if it turned out to be a flop and not a popular thing, and how straightforward would it be for it to be removed and the square return to what it's like at the minute?
It could very easily be dismantled and removed. And the extension on the roof of Really Curious could be simply remain as part of the Really Curious exhibition space.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Sultan, next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so Paul mentioned in his presentation that the design of this arc is, he's impressed with that. And in terms of harms, he mentioned that the buildings, of course, the cathedral and the school, and through that, I think council building a little bit coming over, looking over the statue as well. So, I mean, and it's only for certain hours of the day, I suppose. It's not 24 hours in operation. How that is, and it's not a physical harm to any of this property. It's just visual harm to certain hours of the day. How I'm just wondering to understand that how that is in comparison with many hundreds of thousands of people and many millions of pounds into the economy. And also, I mean, one more question, I mean, as a question or as a comment, I did ask this question.
Can you stick to a question?
Yeah, I mean, it is in a sense a question. I did ask while I had this briefing on this about the social inclusion, that how we're gonna make sure that the people know that they have this benefit, that they can come in and visit the the platform and use it and watch it and learn it with less money or whatever the process would be. I mean, how we will identify. The answer was in a sense clear, but I think there should be some sort of further information on that. So my question was, anyway, it's not a physical harm, it's a visual harm, but for how long it would be, and why you think that even the design is good, but then the harm outweigh the economic benefit?
Yeah, but the arc will be operational up to 18 hours a day. It's going to be in flight for 60% of that time. It'll be, as I said in the presentation, it'll be at maximum height for 50% of that, 60% if you like. It's a modern, striking, new, but a very alien design and appearance. So it's going to clash and contrast very much with the appearance and setting of the cathedral and the abbey buildings beside it, and the Grade 1 listed gatehouse and so on, which are hundreds of years old, in a setting where the elevation, say you take the elevation from Park Street looking across to the cathedral, there's nothing interrupting that. You've got that, the cathedral, the spiritual feel of it is uninterrupted. There's nothing there. It's just the cathedral, and you're going to have this thing moving up and down behind it, this alien capsule, this strange looking pod on Mars going up and down. In itself, the arc is going to look very good. It is a very interesting design, but it will clash very badly with the cathedral. And that's why we're saying it's going to harm the setting of the cathedral. While it won't physically harm it, visually, yes, it will harm it. On the second point, the workings as to how to make the arc more inclusive to a wider range of people will be through something the applicant will develop or would like to develop if this is approved, and that would be the social innovation program, which has yet to be worked up. It would take time to work that up, but it would be done, I would imagine, in conjunction with the We the Curious existing outreach program, which already brings in people from schools and parts of Bristol. So it reaches out to children who wouldn't otherwise get the opportunity to visit We the Curious. So hopefully the 10% of the profits from the arc could be used as part of that outreach program, or jump onto that, use that as a vehicle to getting people to come along to go to the Ark who wouldn't otherwise have the chance.
Thank you.
Thank you. The final question I can see is Chris.
Hello, thank you very much, Chair. And thank you, Paul, for the very reasoned and just excuse me, presentation you put forward. I listened to all the statements, and there's just one statement that came to mind. If this was built and the noise was excessive, it's a very noisy place anyway, how would we deal with excess noise? Because once it's built and it's up, I know you said it could be easily taken down, but I am a little bit concerned with the noise. So what would happen if it did become too noisy?
I think there is actually some confusion there, because there was quite a lot of discussion that I had with our pollution control colleagues on this, who looked at this noise issue, and it's felt that it actually won't be heard at all, or it really won't be anything that will be noticeable to people, and it shouldn't really detract from the use of Millennium Square as a distractive, large, audible noise. So we feel it's actually acceptable, the noise that it will generate. There will be some noise, but it will be below background noise levels.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Fee and Sultan, I see you've got your hands up again. Fee, I'll come to you.
Yes, very quick one. The 10% of the profits figure, that's written in as a condition, isn't it? Just to refresh my memory. Yeah. Good. Thank you. Yes or no? Good. That's it.
Thanks, Fee. And Sultan?
No, Chair, I don't know why my hands is still up, but I'm going to...
Oh, we probably both pressed lower hand and counteracted each other. Right, any further questions before we move to the discussion? No, doesn't look like anyone. Okay, let's move to the discussion then. Richard, you were fastest finger first. Go on.
Chairman, for most of my time on council, I've served on DC committees. Sometimes I've agreed with the officers' recommendations, sometimes not. I don't think I've ever felt more I've been living in a parallel universe than this evening. I do wonder if this committee was receiving an application for Brunel's suspension bridge, whether we'd have a recommended refusal. It does make me wonder. In my view, this application is for a graceful, stylish, and indeed elegant structure. And the fact it's 100% solar powered should be a real boon for us. It's something we, with all our climate and zero carbon credentials and ambitions, should be embracing. Especially recovering after COVID, it seems to me the economic, the educational, and the tourism boost this could give to Bristol is immense. We should grasp this with both hands. I sincerely believe our city centre heritage assets will actually be enhanced by this and not damaged. With regard to Historic England's concerns, they say that actually any damage would be less than substantial. So we know that already. For all those reasons, I am going to vote against the officers today. Hopefully, members will take a commonsensical view and the recommendation to refuse will fall, in which case I give notice. I plan to move a recommendation to approve, subject to delegated officer conditions being agreed.
Thank you, Richard. I've got Fabian next.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with a lot that Richard has just said. I mean, okay, the cathedral view. It's already one of the best, clearest views of the cathedral from the sort of harbour side of the Millennium. Is actually obstructed by a odd-looking cafe with a sort of a U-shaped roof. That's already there. In Brighton, they've got the I-360, which is a huge thing on the where the entrance to the West Pier used to be. That's Regency Brighton. That's there. London Eye on the Thames changes the skyline. In Bristol, we've got the huge lights that went around the Gloucestershire cricket ground up in Bishopston. You look up the hill from Cottam, and you look over across there, and you see these huge lights, and they really are a blot on the landscape, but they're there. You've got the Serpentine Bridge that was referenced earlier. You think about how much was destroyed after the war. We actually destroyed more after the war than we lost in the Blitz. You only have to look at the photos from Reece Winston that were taken in the 50s and beyond to know that. And already, Millennium Square is already a mashup of the historic and the brand new. And it's, I think, quite a fabulous mix. I love it down there. I think we need to be brave, and I think we need to support this. I think we need to reject the officer's recommendation. I know, I would also add that the cathedral, we talk about the cathedrals being impacted by this. The dean of the cathedral and the cathedral themselves, the staff, people who look after the cathedral, diocese, support this. So, this actually has the support of the cathedral. So I think for me, we need to be courageous. We need to be brave. This is striking. It's different. It's completely sustainable. If it doesn't work, it can be easily taken down. It's very Bristol. It's a unique thing that could give us the kind of investment and shot in the arm economically that we really are going to need as a city coming out of this COVID depression. So I would like to say that if Richard's going to propose approval, I'm more than happy to second. I would like, I think the noise issue's been dealt with because officers confirmed that actually the noise would be acceptable. What we could always look at, if we're worried about the heritage asset, is whether it's possible for the thing to be stored horizontally rather than vertically when it's not in use. That would take it out of the skyline overnight when it's not being used. But for me, that's not a deal breaker. That's just something that could be considered as a condition when there's a negotiator. But for me, I have to support this. I think it's a brilliant, exciting thing, and to throw it out and throw out the potential regeneration would be incredibly unwise of us. The skyline of Bristol is already changing. We've got high rises going up in a lot of places. Skylines change is a fact of life. The Brunel Bridge was talked about earlier. Things happen, stuff changes, and that's how cities evolve. This is just another stage in our evolution as a city, and I think we should give it our wholehearted support. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabian. I've got Fee, then Leslie, then Ollie, then Chris, then Sultan.
I'll try and keep this brief because I think the last thing you need is everybody holding forth for 10 minutes each. I have to say, I do feel for the officer here because you've had a couple of real stinkers of late. What with the university library and then this one. So, yeah, so you've had your hands full. So, yeah, appreciate all the effort you put into it. That said, I do agree with a lot of what's been said before. I'm happy to vote for this. It's by no means the same as some of the really rather ugly tower blocks that that have been approved of late. And this is far more elegant and far more beautiful. That said, I'm a bit concerned about the economic viability of it going forward, but I'm happy to vote for it. Having said that, I think it's completely bonkers and nothing would make me set foot on that thing. Really, it makes me feel completely nauseous just looking at the pictures of it. But still, each to their own. So yeah, I'm happy to vote for it.
Thanks, Fee. Leslie, please.
Right. I agree with everything everybody else has said. I mean, Bristol has so often been behind the curve on these things, for instance, the arena, and we should grab this and support it. in every way that we can, and I shall be voting against the recommendation.
Thank you. Ollie, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say, I'm probably not, I'm more towards Fee's level of excitement about what the thing does and about as likely as Fee to use it, although doubtless I'll happily tell friends of mine that it actually fires the little glass bubble away from the building rather than just taking it up gently and then back down again, and then enjoy a cup of coffee outside while they're fearing for their lives on the machine. But that said, I mean, I'm keen for us to have tourist attractions in central Bristol. I have a suspicion it might not be as popular as some people think, because if it was, we'd probably be building it in South Gloucestershire rather than Bristol, as we are with our arena, and our zoo is being relocated there. But that's a bit of cynicism for perhaps another time. I think for me, one of the key points that in its favour is that the cathedral is fond of it. They would not want the setting to be ruined. I like the fact that it can be taken away if it doesn't work out. So we're not going to be stuck with some big lump of metal there forever, should it end up not being that popular. Equally, if it does turn out to be popular, then we'll have extra footfall, extra tourism, and so on. And although normally I'm more conservative than our planning officers when it comes to heritage assets, I'm possibly even more conservative than Richard Eddy on occasion. When it comes to heritage assets, on this occasion, I do think that there's a more compelling argument to support it than to say no.
Thank you, Ollie. Chris, please.
Sorry, unmute. Anyway, thanks again, Paul. I was very interested in the public statements because that is a lot of very important people around that area, all in favour of it. And now the noise issue has been, I've been assured about that. I'm sure that the good to the public is going to be much more than the damage. So the benefits outweighs the damage to me. And I'm going to be supporting this application. So we'll be going against officer recommendation. Sorry, Paul.
Thank you, Chris. And finally, Sultan.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Paul and the team that worked hard, and of course presented a good case. But the issues there, I think, has been so far almost nothing in terms of, as we have seen, as Chris says, that the people are supporting this application are quite significant, including the cathedral. And the important bit here is that I think Councillor Mead's question was that what would be if it is not successful? That's something I was kind of quite concerned, because sometimes when you have things like that and are not successful, and then you are stuck. But in this case, as you assured, that it will be quite easily taken down. But let's not go into that. Let's hope that we don't have to take it down. Let's hope that it will be a successful project. And with that, I think the economic and the tourist attraction and of course, Bristol is well known, and it is on the world map for one of the best city and so on, and all this and historical background as well. So let's have something add to it, and have this in some cases in some presentation eyesore, but it's not. It will be nice, and let's have a mix of old and new.
Okay, thank you, Sultan. Right then, so that's everyone that's spoken. So let's move to voting. Just for it's pretty obvious where this is going to go, but just for the avoidance of doubt, as chair, I will move the officer recommendation to refuse. Is there a seconder? No, doesn't look like there is a seconder, so that motion falls. Could I have an alternative motion, please?
Could I move we formally approve this on the applicant's four main reasons? the positive impact on the heritage assets, the design which is innovative and good, the educational cultural offer, and the impact on the economy. And can I suggest we delegate to officers to agree the conditions? Could I also, picking up Fabian's point, I don't think it's a deal breaker, but can we have a discussion with the applicant's agents about the non-operational storage of the actual cabin? That would be helpful. Could I move that?
And I'll
Thank you,
second.
Richard. And thank you, Fabian. Second, can I just clarify in what you said, Richard, firstly, that when you mentioned the officers doing the conditions, that included the section 106
Indeed.
for transport.
Yeah.
And the request to look at whether it can be stored horizontally, do you wish to make that a condition or just a nice to have?
I wouldn't really make it a condition, but I think we need to explore that with the applicant's agent.
Yeah,
okay,
that's
so
my
we can
position.
make that clear.
Not a deal breaker, but if we can,
yeah,
if that's possible, go for it. But if it's not possible, it has to be stored vertically. Yeah. I'm still in favour.
Okay, thank you both. Right, so that's a motion that's been seconded. So let's go to the vote. So first of all, Fabian.
4.
Thank you. Sultan.
4.
Thank you. Ollie.
4.
Thank you, Ollie. Leslie.
4.
Thank you. Chris.
4, Chair.
Thank you. For Richard.
4.
4. Thank you. Fee.
4.
4. Thank you. And I'm also voting for, so that's unanimously approved, subject to conditions. Thanks very much, everyone. I'd like to propose we have a 5-minute comfort break. So if we come back at 7:20, and please be prompt so we can get started on the next application. Thank you. if you're back, can you put your camera on just so I can know who's missing? I just saw Chris moving around, so it looks like it's Ollie and Sultan we're after. Excellent, everyone's back. Okay, so let's get started again then. We'll move on to the next application, which is Astry Close in Lawrence Weston. And first of all, we'll do the public forum. So firstly, we have Councillor Joe Sargent. Hi, Joe.
Hello. Nice to see you.
You too. Right,
Yeah.
Go ahead when you're ready.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it is really nice to see all my lovely colleagues from DCB, and it's funny to be on the other side, so to speak. But I'm just here in my capacity as ward councillor for Avonmouth and Lawrence Weston to give my own conditional support for this scheme and to let people know that my experience, there is no opposition to this at all. And a few points, obviously, I'm sure you've all read my my statement, but I would just add that I think I was perhaps not forthcoming enough in saying things positive rather than things that aren't negative, and to say that I do genuinely like the design, and I like the fact that the design has been, you know, it's been collaborated on by members of the community. The council houses that were built there after the war were, fantastic for the people that moved into the area and provided really much needed homes. But that doesn't mean that they were perfect. And also they were built for people without real consultation. This project is a consultative project, and people have had the chance to sort of have a say in what homes they're going to live in. So I just think it is really important to emphasise that it is a project that has support, and where there might be issues around.
Can you sum up, please, Jo?
Yeah, not as much not as much communal space. There'll be lots of community spirit to make up for that. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Mark Pepper.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, I'm chair of Lawrence Weston Planning Forum and a lifelong Lawrence Weston resident. Later, you will hear the officer's concerns as to why he has decided to recommend refusal for this highly resident-supported application, with 46 comments of support and not one objection. The officer claims it doesn't fit with the local character of the area. Well, not all characteristics of our area are positive, and that is exactly what we're trying to change. Highways. We have worked closely with Transport Development Management over the last 2 years, with many concessions being made by us. The scheme is now fully compliant with all national and local highways requirements without the need for the suggested highways conditions. Density. The residents have supported many housing developments in the area with one request: no more flats. Flats are fiercely hated by our families that are forced to live in them. We feel that the planning officer has misinterpreted our neighbourhood development plan and failed to listen to the community voice. From day one, we have made compromises, welcoming criticism and making changes, but we refuse to abandon our community's requirements, needs and demands. So I implore you, committee, please approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Thomas Beale.
Thank you, Chair. Dear members of the committee, I'm the Astry Close Project Manager for Ambition Lawrence Weston. Lawrence Weston desperately needs more affordable housing for local people, but it also needs regeneration, investment, and above all, the confidence and the capacity to support its vision for an even better community. With over 13,000 households on Bristol's housing register, the scheme delivers 34 affordable homes for Lawrence Weston, plus 2 self-finished homes, which are also more accessible than the open market. An agreed local lettings policy will ensure local people are given priority. At a time of national economic crisis, the scheme provides 6.5 million in economic activity, creating local jobs and supporting local businesses. A community land trust to hold ownership of the site ensures that the houses will remain under local control and ownership, and creates a long-term asset supporting the community's regeneration and prosperity. The designs meet the very high ecological and energy efficiency standards, easily surpassing the requirements of Bristol's heat hierarchy and contributing to the citywide task of achieving carbon neutrality. These are the homes that the community in Lawrence Weston want and need. We hope that the committee will lend their support to this application.
Thank you. Next is Jamie Siggers.
Good evening. I've been a board member and trustee of Ambition Lawrence Weston since 2013, and particularly supporting the community to deliver a new community-led housing scheme to be proud of. I'm baffled and frustrated that this has been recommended for refusal, particularly on the grounds of the interpretation of an NDP over the proposed use of the verges. They've always been one of the strongest concerns in the area. They're typically poorly maintained, muddy from car parking and covered in litter. They're not safe, suitable or pleasant for play or socialising. And we have confirmed they're almost no ecological value. They have a strong negative impact across the whole neighbourhood. The NDP was written by and voted on by the community, specifically allowing for the verges to be used differently. And these community-led designs aren't getting rid of the verges. They're improving them by proposing and reducing them to a manageable scale and designing to reduce their misuse and maintenance. And designs maintain a substantial 6-metre green virgin path planted with grass and trees on Goodring Hill. And it barely changes the current open space on Oakhanger Drive. To be absolutely clear, this is not the result of pressure to squeeze more homes on the site or make more money. It's a deliberate design choice driven by and for the community which lives here and is passionate about seeing improvement, and has always seen these spaces as an issue that needs resolving.
Thank you. Next, we have Roger Sabido. Roger, you're on mute. Roger, you're on mute.
I'm a member of Lawrence Weston Planning Forum. As residents, we consulted on, surveyed and wrote our linked neighbourhood design statement and development plan. As Planning Forum, we emphasise to all our developers our plan's key goals: make us a place where young families really want to live and stay, with schemes insightfully designed to meet our needs, not just follow the old brochure graphic. I'm not on mute. I'm not on mute.
You've got the YouTube on. That's why.
I don't know what's.
We can hear you. We can hear you, Roger.
Yeah,
Roger,
but
we can hear you. I think you've got your audio attached to the YouTube feed, which is why there's a lag. So if you can just keep speaking, we can hear you.
Hello? 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 Hello?
I can hear him, Chair.
Yeah, no, we can all hear him. He's got the YouTube feed on.
We can all hear you, Roger.
I don't have YouTube on.
Something's clearly going on.
Just ask him to carry on, Chair, because we can all hear him.
I can hear you perfectly.
Roger, there's a huge lag between you and us. Whenever you hear this, just carry on speaking and finish your statement.
As Planning Forum, we emphasise to all our developers our plan's key goals: make us a place where young families really want to live and stay, with schemes insightfully designed to meet our needs, not just follow the old brochure graphic estate layout. So meld with, but enhance our locality, not duplicate mistakes of old, forcing our young families into flats. That verges are a leading friction for us, a festering negative amenity to be reworked. We hugely value our green space, so design out causes of friction, create social sustainable use by real people, foster a resilient, loved community. To all our planning report fails to grasp the reality behind our documents. Our forum is positive, the scheme is compliant, is where the estate needs and wants to go. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Roger. Please, any other public forum speakers, please turn your YouTube off. I heard a couple then as people were entering the room, so it ends up with that confusion we just had. So next we have Sam Goss.
I'm the architect for this co-design project that was based on community consultation and understanding local needs. We followed an exemplar participatory design process that enabled residents' full involvement. Every aspect of the scheme reflects local aspirations, including house types, appearance, parking design, garden sizes, and materials. The proposals are overwhelmingly supported by the community, creating houses, not flats, which led to the residents' preferred layout and makes an efficient use of land. Every fabric first, all electric home will surpass the city's sustainability standards, and they're comparably close to exemplar schemes in urban design SPD, such as paintworks. The clustered approach enables local residents to build a strong community, whilst the car-free heart space provides safe shared amenity for families. The planning team would have you rip the heart out of this scheme that local residents love to spare the grass verges, which they hate. Please respect the people of Lawrence Weston and enable community empowerment tonight.
Thank you. Next is Steffi Bro.
Hello, good evening. I'm Steffi Bro. I'm the founder of Bright Green Futures, and we develop eco self-built housing communities, and we're doing our first big community, Water Lilies, up the road. So I know Lawrence Weston really well and its challenges, and I also know the huge challenges of getting community projects off the ground, especially ones where people get a real voice and which have high sustainability aspirations. And I know, we've been supporting this project, and I know how much the team worked to meet what the local people wanted, because it's so easy. That's what the big developers do. They do what gets planning permission and what makes money. And it's incredible to see somebody doing something different. It's incredible to see 100% local support. I think I've only seen that once in my career from local people. And I think the planners should be the representation of the local voice. And it's strange to see that turned around. And the fact that it hasn't been questioned, that the planners think they're referring to the local neighborhood plan when actually the local people who wrote it saying, no, that's not what they want. So I think I like the design as well. I think this is about social justice and empowerment, and about giving people, one of the poorest communities in Bristol, a voice. There's very people who very hardly ever get heard. Yeah, that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Amy Smith. Amy, you're on mute.
Hi.
Hiya, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Amy. So I am a resident of Lawrence Weston, and I became involved in the community housing project because I was searching for better housing for my family. So we currently live in a council flat block, and that is, as you can imagine, very challenging. So being able to be involved in the project, in the design, in the types of housing that go up has been really, really important, because I know firsthand what our community is facing, what families go through. Flats really are not a good place for children to grow up. There's just so many reasons why they're just not a good place to grow up. But I do really believe that this will have such a positive impact on Lawrence Weston. It offers a chance to people like me that won't often get this chance to move into better housing that is not poorly designed, it's not overcrowded and not expensive. It's given me a massive sense of community spirit. I've had so many people approach me to ask questions about it, which has been really refreshing. And as a resident, actually having a voice in this from the beginning to the end has been so inspiring, because in the end, it will be families like mine that get to live in these houses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then finally, we have Councillor Don Alexander.
Thanks, Chair, and good evening. This application has been developed by Ambition Lawrence Weston, the holders of the Lawrence Weston Neighbourhood Development Plan, and has involved a considerable amount of community engagement. The site has long been a blot on the landscape and regularly attracts fly tippers. The benefits associated with this application are considerable, particularly the amount of social housing and the house's sustainability, all of which is well described in the officer's report. Affordable housing is desperately needed in Lawrence Weston. The policy conflicts are largely to do with design, an area which local residents are well qualified to meaningfully assess. At the heart of these differences is the fact that the existing layout of the estate, whilst attractive in theory, in practice often does not work well, as the very verges which are highlighted as a feature are often used as car parks and informal workshops. This painful truth will be well known to all councillors who have estates of this age in their wards. I know that this tension with existing policy has been thoroughly considered by the applicant, and I ask you to assess the application before you in this light, giving full weight to their ability to judge what makes for an attractive and livable neighbourhood that they themselves would wish to live in.
Thank you, Don. Right, so that's the end of the public forum. Before we go to the officer presentation, I just want to go to Gary.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to give a brief introduction to this application, really, because as you will have already have heard and will have seen in the report, there is a lot to commend this application. You know, it's on the back of a neighbourhood development plan. It's community led. You know, there's so much here to support. Yet we're here in front of you, very regrettably, with a recommendation for refusal. And you'll see by the age of the application, this is as a result of a lot of effort to try and negotiate us to a position of compromise that we could support. There was reference in the public forum to changes and compromise. I must say I've been involved in this application for about 12 or 18 months, and I have to say I haven't seen any change or compromise, which is probably a career first for me, and it's very regrettable. We haven't taken an overly purist approach to this, including the grass verges. You know, we would accept a compromise position on that, but sadly, that's not what is before you today. As Councillor Don Alexander said in the final statement, really, it is an issue. Obviously, local people, the Neighbourhood Planning Forum, absolutely have a valid view on the application. But also, I would say that yourselves, as the local planning authority, you have a key view on this as well. And I think when the planning officer takes you through the scheme, I would just ask you to take a very close look at the quality of the environment that's being provided in terms of the relationship between the various dwellings, and in particular, whilst the heart space is a good initiative, to have a look at really the type of environment that would be created given the small amount of space that's being dedicated for, you know, a wide range of use and activity, and really whether that would work. So it is regrettable that we're at this position. We've tried really hard. We would have accepted something of a compromise compared to what you had before you. I didn't like the reference to the fact that we would rip the heart out of the scheme. We've been trying to do the very opposite, you know, and we did see alternatives that we were discussing, but sadly none were ever formally tabled. So I'll hand over now to David, the case officer, to talk you through the application and the relevant issues.
Hi everybody, good evening. Oh, we're not quite on presentation, are we? There we go. Okay. So I'm David. I've been considering this application on behalf of the local planning authority. Can everybody see that okay? Just to clarify.
Yeah, that thing in the top middle is just obscuring the titles, but we can see the rest of the slides. It's fine.
I don't quite understand what that is.
Don't bother. It's only obscuring the titles, so it'll be fine.
It seems to be fading slowly into the background.
Yeah.
Okay. So as we've already heard, the site is in Lawrence Weston. Just for anybody that wasn't aware, we're up in the northwest of the city, close to the M5 motorway. The site, Astry Close itself, is broadly in the centre of Lawrence Weston. It's in close proximity to the district centre at Ridingleys, and you've got the Blaise Castle estate and the King's Weston estate to the south of the site. So this is an aerial of the site itself. So we're looking north here, so kind of from the Blaise Castle perspective. The site is in the foreground there. You've got existing houses on Brookthorpe Avenue to the south of the site, and to the north of the site there are 2-storey flats in the north angle, and you've got 3-storey flats off to the east side also. So this is how the site appeared in 2012. So this was prior to the site being cleared. It previously contained a total of 8 houses, eight semi-detached pairs, total of 16 houses, which were built from precast concrete and were demolished in 2012. The site is owned by the council, so the council undertook the demolition in 2012. So that's broadly what the site looked like on a layout plan. So you've got the 8 pairs of semi-detached houses there. Astry Close is a one-way street, so traffic can only enter from the east of the street, and it's got a turning head at the far end. So this is how the site appeared in 2019, following clearance in 2012. It's been vacant for quite a long period. As you can see, there's quite a change in level across the site to the south of the site as the elevation increases, climbing King's Weston Hill to the south of the site. So you've got that quite steep gradient to contest with, which has been quite a difficult part of the proposals for the site. So the proposals themselves, just to provide a brief summary, total of 36 dwellings, a mixture of 16 2-bedroom houses, 16 3-bedroom houses. There'd be 4 flats within the scheme. That would be a single 1-bedroom flat and 3 2-bedroom flats. All of the dwellings, apart from the self-build dwellings, are proposed to be affordable, classified as affordable housing. So it'd be 8 shared ownership, 26 affordable rent properties. The properties come in a mixture of semi-detached, terraced and detached form. They're all 2 stories high, so the maximum height across the entire site is 2 stories. We've got a mixture of pitched gable roofs and hipped roofs. The colour scheme is sort of grey brick with slate roofs. All of the houses include private gardens. There's a total of 48 car parking spaces on site and off site. A total of 23 trees proposed to be planted on site as part of a landscaping scheme. These are mostly in the public realm on street. And the houses will be heated by air source heat pumps and include solar panels for renewable energy. So just moving on to layout now. As you can see, where previously there was just a single bank of houses fronting Astry Close, this is proposed to be replaced by two rows of houses to the north and south of the site. So there'd be houses fronting Astry Close to the north, but also a secondary row fronting Brookthorpe Avenue to the south. But then in addition to that, you've got some perpendicular rows of terraced houses at the western end of the site fronting Goodring Hill. But you've also got those 2 banks of terrace houses in the middle of the site also. Then at the far eastern end, you've got the flat block. So that's containing the 4 flats that we discussed. And also the self-build houses would be located at that eastern end of the site also. So this is the landscape layout. You can see the on-street parking proposed as parallel bays along Brookthorpe Avenue to the south there. You can also see some on-street parking on Astry Close as well. And there's further parking proposed in the northwest corner in what is currently a grassed area to the northwest of the site. So this is an aerial view of the site from the northwest. You can broadly see the sort of increase in levels across the site with the terraced houses in the middle stepping up the hill. You can generally get a perspective of how the site will relate to the neighbouring buildings as well to the north and south. So this is a close-up image of how the dwellings would appear from the Brookthorpe Avenue perspective. You can see the Brookthorpe Avenue houses in the foreground and the Astry Close houses in the rear. There's a dividing fence line between the rear gardens there, and there's a retaining wall there which transitions the change in level between the two halves of the site. So this is looking at the site from the opposite angle. So you can make out the retaining wall in the middle of the site there, at the bottom of the rear gardens, with the fence on top, and the semi-detached properties to the north and south. This is an impression of how the houses would appear on Astry Close. And this is the proposed terrace of 5 houses, which are to be located on Goodring Hill. So this is the terrace for Goodring Hill in elevational view. You can see the grey brick construction, grey windows, and they're to have coloured doors as well. This is the proposed flat block, which would be located at the eastern end of the site. It would contain 4 flats. The ground floor flats would be accessible units and include disabled parking spaces adjacent to the flats. That's the flat block, the elevation view of the front of the flats. So this is the area which is being referenced as the heart space area. It's essentially 2 banks of terraced houses which are located perpendicular to the other rows of houses. The area to the front of the houses will be communal, so access would be available to all residents, but would also provide access to the houses themselves. There's proposed hard and soft landscaping for this area, so you've got paving and concrete steps, as well as the slide for children's play, and sort of landings in between to be able to access the houses themselves that front onto that space. So as we've already heard this evening, we've already heard about the public consultation, but just to recap that, there has been a total of 46 comments on the application. These were received from 19 different addresses, so some addresses have commented more than once. All comments were in support. The local community clearly overwhelmingly supports the scheme, and the public consultation has been entirely positive. As well as that, as we've heard this evening, Councillors Joe Sargent and Don Alexander both support the application as well. Turning to internal and external contributors in the planning process. So the majority of our internal and external contributors support the scheme, don't have any issues with it, subject to conditions. However, our city design group, landscape team and arboricultural team have all raised objections to the scheme, which I'll introduce you to in a little bit more detail now. So the key issues which has resulted in this application being presented to committee this evening, the key concerns, the reason that the application's here is the 2 issues, the development of grass verges and the quality of amenity for future occupiers of the development itself. So to introduce these issues, the Lawrence Weston Neighbourhood Development Plan, under the heading of Parks and Green Spaces, refers to the green verges and parks in the neighbourhood as providing a attractive green environment. So as you can see here, the setting is very green, it's very open, it's very spacious, it provides a very sort of healthy feeling to the neighbourhood. These open spaces are features which prevail across Lawrence Weston. They're common features on the estate. They were part of the original design and layout. the neighbourhood development plan highlights them as attractive features of the neighbourhood, and the local planning authority is inclined to agree with that statement on the basis of their green and open character, and I think it's also worth referencing the sort of consistency of these features, in that they haven't previously been built on and have generally been retained across the estate as well. So as you can see, the original layout on Astry Close, the house is finished short of these grass verges, which are bookend this development site. The grass verges are available for use by local residents. They're maintained by the council. The council maintains these spaces, and they weren't previously part of the Astry Close area, however, have been added in to make up part of this development site. The open spaces and grass verges are identified to qualify as unidentified open space under local policy DM17. So that policy states that where open space, which is locally important for visual amenity, we will not permit development of that open space. So that's obviously causing a bit of an issue with this application, in that our policy states that where open space is important to visual amenity, we will not permit development of that space. So that's one of the reasons that this application is here this evening. I'd also highlight that the Lawrence Weston neighbourhood plan, Astry Close, is highlighted as a development site, a housing development site in the neighbourhood plan. However, the allocation for the site doesn't include the grass verges at the end of the site. It just includes the former housing area. So these additions, the grass verges at the end of the site, are in excess of the original development site. So this is an aerial view of the houses that are proposed to go on this grass verge. We've got the terrace of 5 houses here, and the car parking area in the grass verge adjacent, hard up against the trees there. So the concern is in this location that the development of these spaces is out of character with the neighbourhood, and that housing in this location will appear obtrusive, particularly when viewed in association with the adjacent open space, which will remain undeveloped. You can see that there's a consistent building line maintained by the existing buildings that are adjacent to the site. So those buildings on Broadlands Drive to the north and Brookthorpe Avenue to the south. This terrace of 5 houses on Goodring Hill would be positioned significantly ahead of that building line. Generally, our local policies encourage development to respond to established building lines in order to maintain character and appearance. So that's the concern in relation to the green open spaces. Turning to the second concern that's been raised, this relates to amenity within the development. Obviously, we're going from having a single row of houses to having 2 rows of houses back to back. This means that the site is very constrained. The perpendicular rows of houses, both in the middle and at the far end of the site, further complicate this because you have 90-degree angles, which give further proximity issues. And then also you've got the change in gradient as well, which is another challenge in this regard. So the layout itself is very tight. As you can see, there's the change in level also, which is up to 4 meters between houses in height in areas. The distance in terms of separation between the rears of houses is around 11 meters back to back. Typically, between facing windows, our planning policy guidance encourages 18 to 21 meters between facing windows. We do accept less than that, particularly in high density inner urban areas. However, this is not necessarily an inner urban area where you would expect sort of lesser standards. Obviously, I think we would be willing to compromise on that, but the degree of compromise that would be taken here is just too great. Down at 11 meters between facing windows is a step too far for us, and we find that the impact in terms of privacy of residents would be too severe in this case. So that's the back-to-back windows, but we also have very close relationships between the windows, the side windows in the houses as well. You can see that those separations there are down at 13 meters, 15 meters, 12 meters between the side facing windows. It's a very constrained layout, and particularly with that change in levels across the site, it's very difficult for us to justify. This is the other end of the development. You can see that these separations of 12 meters average are again present. This impact on outlook from the houses themselves, also the garden areas, the quality of the garden areas, but privacy is a main issue as well. So turning to the heart space area, again, we have this issue of constrained layout, 9 meters between the fronts of these houses, which are facing each other. So you've got facing windows across that space. Generally, officers don't feel that this heart space area is a particularly high quality area. It's steps, so that makes accessibility difficult. We just don't think that this is a particularly usable area given its scale. I think that the children's play in this area, for example, will more be a nuisance to residents of these houses rather than being a really truly beneficial area. We agree with the idea behind it, but we just don't think it's got the space and the topographical qualities to make this work in this location. So as a result of those issues, the officer's recommendation on this application is for refusal. Officers fully accept the many positive aspects of the scheme. We commend the early community engagement on the scheme, which is very much positive. We'd 100% encourage applicants to engage closely with the community. However, as officers, we're required to assess the development which comes out of that process. And in this case, the development falls short of quite a few planning policy and fairly fundamental planning principles. And for that reason, it's found that the harm that would be caused by the scheme would be outweighing the benefits in this instance. So the scheme is recommended for refusal. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I see Sultan's already got his hand up. Let's go to Sultan.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really glad to see that Lawrence Weston has a local planning forum set up. It's great to have that. In my area, we don't have one. And of course, what I wanted to say is this is a recognized body, local planning forum, or local planning, whatever you may say. So, I mean, you have only two issues here. One with the, it's not in line in your presentation saying it's not in line with the area, the design, and just inadequate amenity. I mean, we have approved planning application tower blocks compromised in space standard, and many others in amenities and so on. And here, this is a housing development, mostly houses, and it has got, it's an open air area. There is no, I mean, there is no issue as such, but yet we have this, you bringing, of course, you know, you are bringing this from the council's policy and development policy, but people are happy to live with that. So why we are...
So what's your question, sorry?
The question here is that, I mean, basically, I think it is what I wanted to say is that why, if the people of the area is happy with this planning, that why we are opposing that.
Comment.
So why is the officer recommendation contrary to the local public's wishes? I think that's really been covered. Is there anything else that Gary or David you want to add?
Only Chair, that clearly, you know, the neighbourhood development plan carries a lot of weight. It's a statutory plan. The representatives from the Neighbourhood Development Forum have spoken about it. Also, David has set out relevant policies within it as well. So there's a disagreement between us and the Neighbourhood Development Forum, unfortunately, on that. But you've heard both sides of that discussion, and obviously, you know, because of the community-led nature of the proposals, you know, that should be given significant weight. But also of significant weight are the adopted policies and also the interests in creating quality environments. And whilst the council has granted permission for high density developments in the past, I don't think we've approved one where there's been this extent of overcrowded between individual dwellings and that heart space, a real kind of tight nature of that. I can't recall a similar kind of amenity space as at the heart of a development that's been given permission before. But, you know, as I always say, you've got to consider this case on its own merits.
Thank you. Richard, next, please, then Ollie.
In a way, it's a follow-on from Gary's answer the last time then. You mentioned, Gary, you were disappointed there hadn't been compromise here, but surely isn't this a classic balancing argument? If we believe that actually there's enough gain for the community, surely that balances out the two concerns you have, in my view.
Yes, it's clearly, you know, as ever, you're giving weight to all the issues, and, you know, wherever the balance tips would lead you as individual committee members to either support the scheme or not support the scheme. We've all got a different view of that. I think what I said at the beginning really was that we were exploring all the issues, but in our minds we had a sort of a number of compromises that I think we would have accepted that would have tipped the balance to a recommendation for approval. And, you know, we saw what that would look like with our own eyes in terms of draft plans, but and sadly, you know, they didn't come forward as formal proposals. So again, you know, you've got to consider the scheme in front of you and apply what weight to those issues that you see fit, really.
Okay. Ollie, next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of very quick questions. The first one was, I wrote it down so I knew my brain would forget it. It was about the grass verges. Yeah, are the grass verges used by local residents? Because we were being told that they were available to be used, but it does rather sound like they might not be, apart from for littering and parking. And the other question was about the oak tree. And I wondered if it were the committee's decision that we were to consider approving the application, would it be possible to make sure that the oak tree was given the kind of protection it needs to thrive in the long term?
I think I'd come back on that. In relation to the use of the grass verges, what we've heard from residents is that they don't see them as beneficial. However, so I would guess that would mean that they're not used. They've been highlighted that they're used for car parking and negative things like that. But the neighbourhood development plan does reference them as attractive features. That is something that it says, and it says that the parking issues should be resolved through innovative street design and alternative uses such as allotment gardens. It doesn't say that they should be developed for housing as the solution to those parking issues. So I think that's the best answer I could give there. In relation to the oak tree, the arboricultural officer at the council has raised concerns about this. It's possible that we could secure additional safeguarding measures for the oak tree via condition. So we can possibly go away and have a look at that were the committee minded to approve the scheme.
Thank you. Phoenix, please.
A couple of quick questions. You said the neighbourhood development plan identified these verges as being of value. Who wrote the neighbourhood development plan? Was that local residents or was it someone from City Hall?
So the neighbourhood development plan was produced by the local community.
I thought so, yeah. I was just trying to check my understanding because it did sound very much from the title. That's where it came from. And secondly, I mean, there's a real clash here between the weight of, well, if you can help tease it out for me, what weight do we give to our local policy as compared to the local people who have designed this, you know, through a council structure, it has to be said. So we've got two kind of clashing council kind of protocols going on here, don't we? I don't quite know which one to give most weight to. And just sort of as a final thing, I mean, we are looking at this housing in terms of future residents as well as current residents, really, aren't we? So we need to think about how it's going to pan out in the long term because they're going to be around for a bit more than 10, 20 years, one would hope. So there's two questions, you know, how do you weigh up those different entities? You know, of local policy that's been done by locals and our city policy, and how much weight do we give to future residents? Does that make any sense? I'm sorry, I'm kind of being a bit incoherent, it's quite late.
Maybe I can answer the first one in terms of weight to be given to the relevant issues. So any policies within the development plan should be given primacy, so the most weight. So that would be the policies that have been set out in the report in relation to the local plan, but also the neighbourhood development plan as well. They're of equal status, whilst the neighbourhood development plan has to follow the citywide policies, they end up being of the same weight. And you should determine the application in accordance with those policies unless, you know, sorry to recite this back at you, material considerations determine otherwise. So it's kind of giving the right weight to all of those policies and then thinking, well, the other material considerations in terms of, you know, the need for housing, the community-led design that's been undertaken, all those benefits, do them in themselves then in your mind outweigh the kind of the direction that the policies are given in terms of things like the design standards. That's the best advice I can provide on that kind of weighing up, really, but I appreciate it's a very difficult thing to do.
Thanks. Next we have Fabian.
Possibly a slightly trivial question, but on the heart space, the imagery shown of it shows a slide being in there as part of the plans. Is that actually something they're just thinking about, or is that actually a formal part of this application?
No, that is part of the proposals. It's in the landscaping scheme for the site, so the slide will be there if the scheme is given permission.
So if I was to suggest that it was, so would I be able to suggest that it was they thought of something else instead, or maybe, or would we have to, you know, could we suggest that bit was relocated somewhere else? Do we have that option?
Gary, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, I think you'd be straying into redesigning the scheme, albeit a small element of the scheme. I think particularly on the basis that the scheme has been is the fruit of a lot of local involvement. I think the scale of the space, the kind of the steps, the slide, they're all a very deliberate and conscious part of the design, really. So I'd advise the committee against redesigning elements of the scheme. I think it's the scale, the limited scale of the space, and I think everything that's expected of it, including the fact that a number of dwellings are fronting onto it. That's one of the hearts of the issues for us in terms of future amenity. So, I mean, you've referenced the slide there, Councillor Beckles. I think it's probably about more than the slide, really. Or the slide is probably the focus of an issue that we've identified, really, in terms of a potential clash between reasonable expectations of the amenity of the residents who will face onto that space, and also the equally reasonable expectations of the wider community to use that space for the purposes for which it has been designed.
Okay, thank you. Doesn't look like there's any more questions unless anyone wants to jump in. Doesn't look like it. Okay, let's move to the discussion then. Who would like to start? Richard, then Fee, then Chris, then Fabian.
I've got a feeling, was it Fee came before me, but ladies first?
You all appeared at once. I just went with whoever's on the top left for me.
It's not often I get called a lady, but there we go. Yeah, I'm really torn on this one, because I think a lot of us have encountered some of the people who spoke on behalf of the residents of Lawrence Weston in various iterations and know them to be people of enormous integrity and energy and local connections. And it's just, I'm really struggling, because there's so many bits and pieces of this that just simply don't match planning policy. And that even I can see, having a playground with steps right at the middle of it. I mean, it's, how are you going to get your pram up there? And I know that there's a real sort of jobs with attitude towards council rules and regulations and with a dead-handed bureaucracy and all the rest of it. But there is quite a lot here that I feel really uncomfortable about. But on the other hand, there's an awful lot which local community support, which I feel really uncomfortable about rejecting. So I am well wedged on the fence on this one. I really don't know what to do. Yeah, so completely unhelpful comments. There we go. Someone else decide, will you?
Thanks, Fee. Let's go back to Richard.
Well, I'll be very brief, which will please the chairman no end. Firstly, my apologies, Gary and David. I'm going to, for the second time this evening, reject officers' recommendations and to vote to approve this. In my view, it's a common sense balancing act, actually. There's a huge amount of gain here, which all three councillors cross-party for the war support, the local community supports, and the architects and the applicants have came up with a scheme which works. So I'll be actually voting for approval, or at least gets the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Richard. Chris, next, please.
Yeah, I'll be short and sweet. I'm happy to second what Richard has said. I think this is an exemplar for how to communicate with the local community. They put a lot of work into this. It looks very nice. I understand there are some issues with the play area, but I think the benefit of this far outweigh any negative sides of this. So I'm more than happy to support Richard's second, Richard, and I will be voting against the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Chris. Fabian, next, please.
With apologies to the officers, because as with the last one, I know they put professional work, a lot of professional effort in and give us professional advice and guidance, but I too will be voting against the officer recommendation. Personally, I think I would have gone for a bigger heart space. I'd also look at, there's an empty verge to the right of the houses. So you've got the car park, then the houses. Personally, I'd be looking at putting a children's play area on that rather than sliding the current heart space. And, with a bit of money from the area committee, it would be reasonably easy for the community to apply for grant funding to get a play area. I managed to get 2 in my ward a few years ago, so it can be done. But I think, there's a lot about this scheme I like. I think, it's clear that the residents find the verges a nuisance, and so I think we need to listen to them rather than just saying, oh, we've got to protect something that they want to reinvent. If they want to reinvent it, we need to listen to them. They're the ones who are living up there, and they're the ones stuck with the decision for good or ill. I like the design of the houses in general. I love the fact that some of the houses have actually got split level gardens. I think that's really, that really is pretty good. If the slide goes where it's proposed, then obviously the people who move into those houses in the heart space will know what they're moving into anyway. So if they're okay with it, who am I to say they can't have it? So I think, and ultimately I believe in, listening to people and working with communities rather than just telling them what they can, dictating to them what they can and can't have. This is something that's been drawn up by the local community. They all support it. They're all going to live with it. A lot of them want to live on the site, on this new site, and I don't think that it's the job of the council to get in the way. I think the good outweighs the harm, and I will support a motion to grant permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabian. We've got Ollie and then Sultan.
Thank you, Chair. Not so long ago, I had the misfortune of having to study how neighbourhood development plans are put together at UWE, and so many of them, the vast majority, seem to be in small villages, very expensive villages, I might add as well, wanting to avoid having this, avoid having that, avoid having something else. And so when we looked at the Lawrence Weston neighbourhood development plan, it was a beautiful thing to behold compared to everything else. I know we're setting a very low bar here, so I don't want to diminish the achievement there. But what it looks so positive and forward looking. And it's so often that at committee we have really horrible looking developments that none of us would want to walk through, let alone have the misfortune of living in. And they're recommended for approval, and some of them have no inadequate internal space and no outdoor space. And now we're looking at something that looks like it's been quite well designed. Yes, there are some houses that perhaps parents with kids in pushchairs won't necessarily be able to use so easily, but that's about finding the right tenants for the right homes, I would suggest. It does look like the kind of place where kids could make friends with one another. There are outdoor pockets of space in back gardens. And there's a lot more, I think, to commend it than normal. I would hope that if we are minded to go against officer recommendation, I would hope that we'd also include a condition to help keep that oak tree safe. They are quite incredible habitats and ecosystems for all sorts of bugs and creepy crawlies that to normal people, a bit like councillors really, don't serve any obvious purpose, but actually do have an important function to fulfill in the wider natural world. So, God, Clive would be so proud of me if he was here at this meeting. But so if we can protect the oak tree as well, I would support going against the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Ollie. Let's go to Sultan next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I know I quite often mumble, but last one I did mumble a lot because I was really hungry. And I couldn't put my question together. But anyway, yeah, so it's, I think, all said and done. I'm really sorry to go against officer recommendation, and I will be supporting the local community. As Ollie said and others, they're the one who's going to live in there, and they have designed it, co-designed it, and they know very well their community. and they're representing a local plan, development plan, which is, it is an approved body by the local government and so on. So yes, I'm happy to support local people.
Thank you very much. I think that's almost everyone. Does anyone else want to add anything before we go to a motion? No, it doesn't look like it. Okay, well, as before, let's move to the motions, and as chair, I will move the officer recommendation to refuse. Is there a seconder? Looks like there's not, so the motion falls. Is there an alternative motion, please?
Could I propose we, in principle, approve? I'm very conscious here. There aren't draft conditions like previously, and several people, including Fabian, Ollie, have raised some issues. So perhaps it might be appropriate to defer with, but committee is minded to approve subject to conditions which meet our concerns. Would that be appropriate, Chairman?
Well, we've got two alternatives really. We can do that, or we can just delegate doing the conditions to officers, and whatever the majority prefers really with that.
Chair, I'd be happy to delegate the conditions to officers.
Yeah.
So would I, Chair.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think we've had a formal motion. Do you want to say something formally, Richard?
We approve and delegate conditions to the officers, Chairman.
Thank you.
Happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. And as before, those conditions, I'm assuming, include Section 106.
Yeah.
Yep.
TRO. And do we want to include a condition on the oak tree?
Yes.
Yes, please, Chair.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that clear, Gary and David?
That's clear, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so let's go to the vote. So the motion is to approve subject to conditions, the Section 106 and the condition on the oak tree. Fabian, please, first.
4.
4, thank you. Sultan?
4.
4, thank you. Ollie?
4.
4, thank you. Leslie?
4.
Thank you, Leslie. 4. Chris?
4, Chair.
4, thank you. Richard?
4.
4, thank you. Fee?
You persuaded me. 4.
4, thank you, Fee. And I'm also voting 4, so another unanimous vote to approve that application. So thank you very much, everyone. Just before we close, I just wanted to say, because this is the last meeting before the elections, and myself and a number of others are stepping down. So I just want to say thank you very much for being an excellent committee to chair. I think we've made some good decisions for the best for Bristol. But especially thank you to the officers, to Gary and everyone else, because we couldn't do it without you, and we really rely on and value your expert support with all of this. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for your hard work as well, Chair.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, all members. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That closes the meeting.